The fluorescent lights of the convenience store hummed, a monotonous drone against the backdrop of the afternoon traffic outside. Lin Jiaojiao clutched a crumpled $5 bill and a handful of loose change, her heart a tight knot in her chest. The air conditioning, a stark contrast to the sweltering humidity outside, sent a shiver down her spine. She could feel the cold plastic of the pregnancy test box digging into her palm, a physical manifestation of the weight she carried within. $10. That's all it took to confirm what she already knew, to solidify the fear that had been a gnawing presence in her gut for weeks. She walked to the counter, each step heavier than the last. The linoleum floor squeaked beneath her worn sandals, the sound echoing in the otherwise quiet store. The owner, a middle-aged woman with a permanent frown etched onto her face, watched her approach with an air of weary indifference. Jiao Jiao placed the box on the counter, the barcode staring up at her like a judge's gavel. "This, please," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman scanned the item, the red digits on the display flashing a mocking 10. Jiao Jiao's fingers tightened around her meager funds, a wave of shame washing over her as she counted out the coins, each clink a tiny declaration of her inadequacy. I don't have enough," she admitted, her voice cracking. The woman's frown deepened, her eyes flitting over Jiao Jiao's simple clothes, her slightly swollen belly barely concealed beneath a loose-fitting top. Jiao Jiao felt her cheeks burn, the judgment in the woman's gaze a tangible force. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the cracks in the linoleum floor and escape the suffocating scrutiny. Was it this obvious? Could everyone see the secret she so desperately tried to hide? "Then put it back," the woman said, her voice sharp, devoid of any sympathy. Jiao Jiao flinched, the words like tiny daggers piercing her already fragile composure. She opened her mouth to protest, to plead, but the words caught in her throat. What could she say? That she needed this, that her entire future hinged on this little plastic stick. That the $10 separating her from the truth felt like an insurmountable chasm. "Please," she whispered again, her voice choked with desperation, I need this." She pushed the crumpled $5 bill and the handful of change towards the woman, a pathetic offering. The woman stared at the money, then back at Jiao Jiao, her expression hardening. "Not enough," she repeated, her tone final. Jiao Jiao's vision blurred, tears welling in her eyes. She wanted to scream, to rage against the unfairness of it all. How could something so small, so insignificant, hold so much power over her life? She closed her eyes, willing the tears away, the shame burning in her throat like acid. This was her reality, the stark truth of her situation laid bare in the harsh fluorescent light of a convenience store. Pregnant, alone, and broke. Suddenly, a sigh escaped the store owner's lips. A sigh that wasn't entirely unkind. Jiao Jiao opened her eyes, surprised. The woman's gaze had softened, a flicker of something akin to understanding in her eyes. She pushed the test back towards Jiao Jiao, her voice surprisingly gentle. "Take it," she said, her voice gruff but laced with a surprising warmth. "But remember it. Don't let me see your face again from now on." Jiao Jiao stared at the woman, speechless. The unexpected kindness, the small act of compassion, was like a crack in the dam of her despair. A tiny sliver of hope in the overwhelming darkness. She nodded, unable to speak, her throat tight with emotion. She picked up the test, her fingers trembling. The plastic no longer felt cold, but warm, almost comforting. It was more than just a pregnancy test, it was a lifeline, a symbol of the uncertain future she now faced. As she walked out of the store, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a single thought echoed in her mind. She wasn't alone. Not entirely. Someone, a complete stranger, had seen her struggle, her desperation, and had offered a small, but significant, act of kindness. It wasn't much, but it was enough. For now, It was enough. The weight on her chest hadn't disappeared, but it had shifted, a subtle change in the burden she carried. The road ahead was still long, uncertain, and filled with challenges, but the small act of kindness in the convenience store had lit a tiny spark, a flicker of hope in the darkness. She clutched the pregnancy test tighter, a newfound resolve hardening her gaze. She would face whatever came next, for herself and for the life growing within her. The bass throbbed against Lin Jiaojiao's chest, a physical manifestation of the anxiety churning within her. The air, thick with the cloying sweetness of perfume and the stale tang of alcohol, pressed down on her, suffocating. She hadn't wanted to come. Clubs were not her scene. Never had been. But Li Wei, her roommate, had insisted. "A night out will do you good, Jiao," she had said, her voice brimming with a well-meaning but ultimately misplaced cheerfulness. "You need to take your mind off things." Jiao knew what things Li Wei referred to, the growing weight beneath her simple cotton dress, the whispers that followed her across campus, the gnawing fear that coiled tighter around her with each passing day. Tonight, though, escape felt further away than ever. The pulsing lights of the dance floor cast distorted shadows across the faces of the other clubgoers, rendering them grotesque and alien. Jiao sipped her water, the coolness a stark contrast to the burning shame that crept up her throat. Every glance, every laugh that echoed around the room, felt like a pointed judgment. She clutched her purse tighter, the worn leather a small comfort in the overwhelming chaos. Just a few more minutes, she told herself, then I can go back to the dorm, to the quiet, to the pretense of normalcy. A shrill laugh pierced the rhythmic din, a sound that grated on Jiao's nerves like fingernails on a chalkboard. It was a laugh she recognized. Dread, cold and sharp, sank into the pit of her stomach. Slowly, reluctantly, she turned towards the source of the sound. Zhou Yao. Of course. Surrounded by her usual entourage, Zhou Yao held court in a plush booth, a queen bee amidst her drones. Her designer dress shimmered under the strobe lights, a stark contrast to Jiao's simple attire. The expensive champagne flutes in their hands mocked Jiao's glass of water, a symbol of the vast chasm that separated their worlds. A knot tightened in Jiao's chest. She considered turning away, pretending she hadn't seen them, but it was too late. Zhou Yao's gaze had already locked onto hers, a predatory gleam in her eyes. A cruel smile twisted her lips as she leaned in, whispering something to her friends. Their laughter, sharp and malicious, followed Jiao like a curse. She felt a flush creep up her neck, the heat of humiliation branding her skin. Well, Zhou Yao drawled, her voice dripping with false sweetness, loud enough to carry over the music. Isn't this our top student and school beauty Lin Jiao? The words, seemingly innocuous, were laced with venom. Jiao's stomach churned. Ignore her, she willed herself. Just walk away. But her feet felt rooted to the spot. What are you doing here, Lin Jiao? Another girl from the group chimed in, her voice laced with mockery. Shouldn't you be at the library, studying? Or perhaps attending a prenatal class? A wave of laughter erupted from the booth. Jiao's fingers dug into her purse, the worn leather offering little solace against the burning shame that engulfed her. They know, she thought, her mind racing. How could they know? The rumors, it seemed, had spread faster and wider than she had feared. The whispers, the sideways glances, they were no longer figments of her imagination. They were real, tangible, and they were crushing her. Pretending to be pure and innocent at school, Zhou Yao continued, her voice rising above the music, while secretly let's just say, exploring other extracurricular activities. Her eyes flicked down to Jiao's stomach, a blatant and cruel gesture. Jiao's hand instinctively went to her abdomen, a protective gesture. A wave of nausea washed over her, the smell of cheap perfume and alcohol suddenly overwhelming. I should go, Jiao Jiao stammered, her voice barely a whisper. She turned to leave, desperate to escape the suffocating gaze of Zhou Yao and her friends. But Zhou Yao wasn't finished. "Don't go, Jiao Jiao," she called out, her voice laced with a chilling amusement. "We're just having a little fun. Tell us, who's the lucky father? Someone from your social circle?" The emphasis on social circle was a thinly veiled insult, a reminder of the vast disparity in their backgrounds. Jiao Jiao didn't answer. She couldn't. The words were lodged in her throat, choking her. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, blurring the already distorted lights of the club. "Just go," she pleaded with herself. "Just get out of here. Don't tell me you don't even know." Zhou Yao's laughter, sharp and cruel, echoed in Jiao Jiao's ears. "Going to the club and flirting with any man who'll give you a second glance. Such a desperate little thing, aren't you, Lin Jiao Jiao?" The finality in Zhou Yao's tone, the knowing smirk on her face, it all solidified something within Jiao Jiao. The shame, the fear, it morphed into something else, something harder, colder. Desperation. A raw, primal need to survive. For herself, and for the life growing within her. She would not be broken. She would not be shamed. She would find a way. She had to. The antiseptic scent of the hospital clung to Jiao Jiao's clothes, a stark contrast to the cloying sweetness of the cheap perfume she'd dabbed on that morning. It was a futile attempt, she knew, to mask the exhaustion clinging to her like a second skin. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the pale walls, reflecting in the sheen of worry etched on her mother's face. Grandma lay in the narrow bed, her breathing shallow, a network of 4 lines snaking from her frail arm. The rhythmic beep of the heart monitor was a constant, unnerving reminder of their precarious situation. "The doctor said it's her heart again," her mother whispered, her voice raspy. Jiao Jiao nodded, her throat too tight to form words. She reached out, her fingers brushing against her grandmother's papery skin. How much longer? She wondered, the question a lead weight in her stomach. Not just how much longer would Grandma hold on, but how much longer could they hold on? The medical bills were piling up, a mountain of debt threatening to bury them. Her younger brother, Lin Tao, shifted uneasily beside her. He was only 16, his face still carrying a boyish roundness, but the worry in his eyes mirrored their mother's. "Did you talk to Uncle Zhang?" he asked, his voice barely above a murmur. Their mother sighed, a sound heavy with defeat. "He can't lend us any more. He's already helped us so much." She turned to Jiao Jiao, her gaze sharp, scrutinizing. The unspoken question hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Jiao Jiao looked away, her stomach churning. The fluorescent lights seemed to intensify the faint nausea that had been plaguing her for weeks. "I am looking for a part-time job," she mumbled, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. She couldn't tell them. Not yet. The shame was a physical ache, a knot tightening in her chest. "A part-time job," her mother scoffed, a hint of desperation in her voice. "How much can you earn? It won't even cover a week's worth of medicine." Her eyes flicked down to Jiao Jiao's stomach, lingering for a fraction of a second too long. The subtle shift in her gaze, the slight tightening of her lips, sent a wave of icy fear through Jiao Jiao. "Your belly," her mother began, her voice barely a whisper. "You're not pregnant, are you?" Jiao Jiao flinched, her hand instinctively going to her stomach, a protective gesture. She wanted to deny it, to erase the reality that was growing within her, but the words wouldn't come. The silence stretched, each tick of the heart monitor amplifying the tension in the room. Lin Tao stared at her, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and confusion. "Jiao Jiao." The dam of denial finally broke. Tears welled in Jiao Jiao's eyes, blurring her vision. She nodded, a single, jerky movement. Yes, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. Her mother's face crumpled. Aya, she wailed, her hand flying to her mouth. What are we going to do? Lin Tao looked from his mother to his sister, his young face etched with worry. He didn't understand the complexities of their situation, but he understood the fear in their voices, the desperation in their eyes. He felt a pang of helplessness, a child thrust into a world of adult worries. Lao Mu originally offered 500,000 yuan as a betrothal gift, her mother said, her voice laced with bitterness. Lao Mu, a man old enough to be Jiao Jiao's father, had been pursuing her relentlessly. The thought of marrying him had made Jiao Jiao's skin crawl, but the money would have saved them. How much is it worth? Her mother's voice was barely audible, the question hanging in the air like a poisoned dart. Jiao Jiao recoiled, the word striking her like a physical blow. She understood the implication, the unspoken suggestion that she could sell her unborn child's future for their family's survival. The shame was a burning ember in her chest. She thought of Gu Jingting, the father of her child. A man who moved in a world of privilege and power, a world she could only glimpse from afar. She had met him by chance, a fleeting encounter that had left an indelible mark on her life. He was aloof, distant, a figure shrouded in an aura of mystery. She hadn't dared to contact him, the chasm between their worlds seeming too vast to bridge. Later that day, standing outside the hospital, the cold wind whipping through her hair, Jiao Jiao clutched the envelope in her hand. It contained a substantial sum of money, enough to cover her grandmother's medical expenses for the next few months. Gu Jingting had agreed to meet her, his expression unreadable as he handed her the envelope. He hadn't spoken much, just a curt nod and a brief inquiry about her grandmother's health. Jiao Jiao watched his car disappear down the street, a complex mix of emotions swirling within her. Gratitude warred with resentment, relief with a lingering sense of unease. She knew this was just a temporary reprieve, a bandage on a gaping wound. The weight of her secret, the uncertainty of her future, pressed down on her, heavy and suffocating. She looked back at the hospital, the sterile white building looming against the gray sky. Inside, her family waited, oblivious to the source of their salvation. Jiao Jiao closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. What have I done? She wondered, the question echoing in the hollow chambers of her heart. The future stretched before her, a vast and uncertain landscape, and she was alone, navigating its treacherous terrain. The crystal chandeliers cast a kaleidoscopic rain of light across the ballroom, each shard a tiny mirror reflecting the opulence of the Gu family. Jiao Jiao felt a tremor in her hand as she clutched her purse, the sequins on its cheap fabric a stark contrast to the designer gowns swirling around her. The air, thick with the scent of expensive perfume and something else, something subtly predatory, made her lungs tighten. She shouldn't have come. A knot of anxiety twisted in her stomach. But the invitation, delivered with a thinly veiled threat by Su Tong, had left her little choice. Zhou Yao, radiant in a scarlet gown that screamed money and power, had made it clear this was a showdown Jiao Jiao couldn't avoid. Zhou Yao glided towards her, a smirk playing on her lips. Lin Jiao Jiao, she purred, her voice laced with false sweetness, so glad you could make it. I was worried you wouldn't have anything suitable to wear to such a prestigious event. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, swept over Jiao Jiao's simple dress. The unspoken words hung in the air, heavy with disdain. Jiao Jiao's throat constricted. Shame, hot and prickly, crawled up her neck. She knew what they were thinking. The whispers, the sidelong glances, the barely concealed pity. A pregnant, unwed college student, an unwelcome stain on the pristine fabric of this elite gathering. Just hold your head high, she told herself, her internal voice a fragile shield against the barrage of judgment. Don't let them see you break. Thank you for the invitation, Jiao Jiao managed, her voice steadier than she expected. She met Zhou Yao's gaze, refusing to cower. Beneath the surface of her calm demeanor, a storm raged. Fear, resentment, and a flicker of defiance warred within her. Zhou Yao's smile tightened, a predatory glint in her eyes. "Of course, dear." Jingting insisted. The emphasis on Jingting's name was a deliberate jab, a reminder of Jiao Jiao's precarious position. Su Tong and a few other girls from Zhou Yao's circle closed in, their faces masks of feigned concern. Jiao Jiao felt trapped, like a small animal surrounded by predators. "We're so worried about you, Jiao Jiao," Su Tong chimed in, her voice dripping with insincerity. "A baby, it's such a big responsibility. Are you sure you can handle it?" The others murmured their agreement, their words like tiny needles pricking at Jiao Jiao's already frayed nerves. "They're enjoying this," she realized, a cold certainty settling in her stomach. "They want to see me crumble." "I can manage my own affairs," Jiao Jiao replied, her voice tight. She willed herself to remain calm, to not give them the satisfaction of seeing her tears. But the pressure, the constant scrutiny, was suffocating. Then, Zhou Yao made her move. With a dramatic flourish, she produced a bank card. "Jingting wanted to make sure you were taken care of," she announced, her voice dripping with false generosity. "He knows you're struggling. This should help with the expenses." She dangled the card in front of Jiao Jiao, a blatant display of power and control. Humiliation burned through Jiao Jiao. It was a calculated move, designed to strip her of her dignity, to paint her as a gold digger. A strange calm descended over Jiao Jiao. It was the calm before the storm, the quiet gathering of strength before the eruption. She looked at the card, then back at Zhou Yao, her eyes hardening. "How dare you plot against me," she said, her voice low and steady. She snatched the card from Zhou Yao's hand. "This card may have money," she continued, a flicker of something dangerous in her eyes. She swiped the card through a nearby reader, the small screen flashing a dizzying number. 60 million. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Zhou Yao's smug smile faltered. Jiao Jiao looked up, her gaze sweeping over the stunned faces. "I am Gu Jingting's woman," she declared, her voice ringing with newfound authority. "And this," she gestured to her slightly swollen belly, "is his child." A hush fell over the ballroom. All eyes were on her, no longer filled with pity or disdain, but with shock and fear. Suddenly, a voice boomed across the room, cutting through the stunned silence. "That's right. She is." Gu Jingting's grandparents, followed by his parents and a phalanx of stern-faced relatives, entered the ballroom. The air crackled with power. The whispers stopped. The music died. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Gu Jingting's grandmother, a formidable woman with eyes that could pierce steel, walked straight towards Jiao Jiao. She took her hand, her grip surprisingly gentle. "You are the granddaughter-in-law chosen by my Gu family," she announced, her voice clear and unwavering. She turned to face the crowd, her gaze sweeping over the stunned faces. "And this child," she placed a hand protectively on Jiao Jiao's belly, "is the heir to the Gu fortune." The power dynamics had shifted. The whispers started again, but this time, they were filled with awe and speculation. Zhou Yao stood frozen, her face ashen. Her carefully constructed world had crumbled around her. The engagement party, meant to be her triumph, had become her downfall. Jiao Jiao, the seemingly vulnerable prey, had become the victor. She stood tall, hand in hand with the matriarch of the Gu family, the future secure, not just for herself, but for her child. The fear had receded, replaced by a strange sense of peace. She had found her place, her family. The fight was over. She had won. The antiseptic scent of the hospital clung to Lin Jiao Jiao's skin, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of blood that lingered in her mouth. Pain, raw and visceral, pulsed through her, a rhythmic tide threatening to drag her under. This is it, she thought, clutching the sheets, this is how my life changes forever. Each contraction was a wave, crashing against the shores of her resolve. Fear, a cold, creeping tendril, wound its way around her heart. Fear not of the pain, but of the unknown future that awaited her and her child. A hand, cool and firm, enclosed hers. Gu Jingting. His presence, usually an unsettling mix of aloofness and intensity, was now a strange source of comfort. His gaze, usually sharp and probing, was softened, focused on her with an intensity that felt almost protective. He's here, she thought, a flicker of surprise mingled with relief. He actually stayed. She hadn't expected it. Hadn't dared to hope. Breathe, Jiao Jiao, he murmured, his voice low and steady, a grounding force amidst the chaos within and without. His words were simple, yet they held a weight that anchored her, pulling her back from the swirling vortex of pain. She squeezed his hand, her own a trembling response. His touch, unexpectedly gentle, was a lifeline in the turbulent sea of her labor. Hours blurred into an eternity, each contraction etching itself onto her memory. Then, a different kind of pain, sharper, more intense. A final push, and the world erupted in a symphony of cries. A tiny, fragile life had entered the world, its first breath a testament to her strength, her resilience. Relief washed over her, a tidal wave of exhaustion and profound peace. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the sterile white of the room. A girl, the doctor announced, his voice a distant echo. A girl. Jiao Jiao's heart swelled with an overwhelming rush of love. She craned her neck, wanting to see, to hold, to protect this tiny being who was now a part of her, forever. Gu Jingting stood beside her, his expression unreadable. He reached out, his long fingers brushing against the baby's cheek. The gesture, so small, so tender, sent a tremor through Jiao Jiao. It was a silent acknowledgement, a subtle shift in the dynamics that bound them. The following days were a blur of sleepless nights and whispered lullabies. The Gu family, initially hesitant, had embraced both Jiao Jiao and her child with surprising warmth. Grandma Gu, her face etched with years of wisdom and worry, fussed over the baby, her touch gentle and loving. Grandpa Gu, stern and imposing, held the infant with a surprising tenderness, his eyes softening as he gazed at his great-grandchild. The stark contrast between their current acceptance and their initial pressure for an abortion or a marriage of convenience gnawed at Jiao Jiao. The guilt and shame she had carried for months began to dissipate, replaced by a cautious sense of belonging. She observed the subtle changes in Gu Jingting's behavior, the way he held their daughter, the quiet moments he spent watching them, the almost imperceptible softening of his eyes when he looked at her. He's changing, she realized, we both are. The Zhou family's arrival shattered the fragile peace. Zhou Yao, her face pale and strained, stood at the doorway, her parents flanking her like sentinels. The air crackled with unspoken tension. Jiao Jiao braced herself for the inevitable confrontation. Jingting, Zhou Yao began, her voice trembling, "You don't understand." He turned to her, his expression impassive. "There's nothing to understand, Yao." "The fetus was saved," he said, his voice calm, yet laced with an unmistakable steel. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the room, settling on Jiao Jiao and the baby cradled in her arms. "I am the father of my child." He met Zhou Yao's gaze, his eyes unflinching. "Lin Jiao Jiao is my Gu family's young mistress." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Zhou Yao's parents exchanged a look, a mixture of shock and barely concealed fury. Zhou Yao swayed, her hand flying to her mouth as if to stifle a sob. Su Tong, standing behind her, glared at Jiao Jiao, her eyes filled with venom. Jiao Jiao held her breath, her heart pounding against her ribs. She had expected anger, accusations, maybe even a scene. What she hadn't anticipated was the quiet resignation that settled over Zhou Yao's parents. The unspoken understanding that the game had changed, the power dynamics shifted. The birth of the child had solidified her position, cemented her place within the Gu family. The Zhou family's departure was as swift as their arrival, leaving behind a silence that was almost deafening. Jiao Jiao looked at Gu Jingting, her gaze questioning. He met her eyes, his expression unreadable. He reached out, his hand covering hers, his touch warm and reassuring. "It's over, Jiao Jiao," he said softly, his voice a low rumble. "You and our daughter are safe now." His words, so simple, yet so profound, resonated deep within her. She closed her eyes, a wave of exhaustion washing over her. Safe. The word echoed in her mind, a promise of a future she hadn't dared to imagine. A future where she wasn't alone, where she had a family, a home. A future where she could finally breathe. The weight of the past, the burden of uncertainty, began to lift, replaced by a fragile hope, a tentative belief in the possibility of happiness. The antiseptic scent of the hospital no longer felt sterile and cold, but rather, a clean slate, a fresh start. The cries of her daughter, once a symbol of her fear and vulnerability, now resonated with a different meaning, a testament to her strength, her resilience, and the enduring power of love. And in the quiet strength of Gu Jingting's presence, she found a sense of belonging, a sense of peace she hadn't known she craved. The opulent Gu family home felt alien, a world away from the cramped dormitory room that had been her sanctuary. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, each one a tiny, glittering reminder of the vast difference between her life and theirs. Lin Jiaojiao sat stiffly on the plush silk sofa, the delicate fabric cool against her skin. Her hands, roughened from years of part-time work, fidgeted in her lap. She could still feel the phantom weight of the judgmental stares from earlier, the whispers that had sliced through her like shards of ice. But now, a strange quiet had fallen over the house. A quiet that hummed with anticipation. A servant, her face carefully neutral, approached with a silver tray laden with exquisite delicacies. Jiao Jiao's stomach rumbled, a stark contrast to the elegant setting. She hesitated, unsure if she was allowed to partake. The opulent display felt more like a museum exhibit than a meal. A faint, floral scent hung in the air, something expensive and unfamiliar. She inhaled deeply, trying to ground herself in the present, to quell the rising tide of anxiety. "Please, Miss Lin," the servant said, her voice soft, a stark contrast to the harsh tones Jiao Jiao had become accustomed to. "These are for you." Jiao Jiao nodded, her throat tight. She picked up a delicate pastry, the flaky crust crumbling slightly between her fingers. Each bite felt surreal, a strange mix of guilt and relief. This was the Gu family's way of showing acceptance, a silent apology for the earlier interrogation, the veiled threats. Yet, Jiao Jiao couldn't shake the feeling of being an imposter, a sparrow trapped in a gilded cage. The older woman who had introduced herself as Jingting's cousin entered the room, her presence radiating an aura of quiet power. Jiao Jiao's heart quickened. This was the woman from Shenzhen, the one who had spoken with such authority, the one who had silenced the room with a single glance. She wore a simple, elegant cheongsam that hinted at the wealth beneath the understated style. There was a kindness in her eyes that had been absent earlier, a gentle warmth that eased some of Jiao Jiao's apprehension. "Jiao Jiao," the woman began, her voice like smooth jade. "I owe you an apology. My behavior earlier was unbecoming. I allowed my concern for Jingting to cloud my judgment." Jiao Jiao swallowed, her voice barely a whisper. It's all right." Internally, a whirlwind of thoughts swirled. What concern? What connection did this powerful woman have with Gu Jingting? Why had she intervened so forcefully? The woman smiled, a genuine, reassuring smile that reached her eyes. "No, it's not all right. But I hope you can understand. Jingting, he carries a lot of responsibility. The Gu family, we are not always as understanding as we should be. A servant appeared, carrying a lacquered box. It was intricately carved, a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Jiao Jiao watched, mesmerized, as the woman opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of crimson silk, lay a jade hairpin. It shimmered in the light, a delicate masterpiece of green and white. This, the woman said, her voice hushed with reverence, is the Gu family heirloom. It has been passed down through generations, given only to the most important women in our family. Jiao Jiao's breath caught in her throat. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, the significance of the gesture almost too much to bear. Her mind raced. This wasn't just an apology. It was an acceptance, a proclamation. A symbol of belonging in a world she had never dared to dream of. From now on, the woman continued, her gaze meeting Jiao Jiao's, the entire Gu family will be yours. We will support you, protect you, and cherish you and the child. A single tear rolled down Jiao Jiao's cheek. Relief, gratitude, and a flicker of disbelief warred within her. Later, as the evening drew to a close, Gu Jingting found Jiao Jiao on the balcony, gazing out at the sprawling city lights. He stood beside her, the silence between them filled with unspoken emotions. It's beautiful, Jiao Jiao whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Yes, Jingting replied, his gaze fixed on her profile. But not as beautiful as you. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. The touch sent a shiver down her spine, a strange mix of warmth and unease. Jiao Jiao, he began, his voice low and intense, I know I haven't always been the man you deserved. I was afraid. Jiao Jiao turned to face him, her eyes searching his. Afraid? Of what? Of the responsibility? Of the societal implications? Of his feelings? He took her hands in his grip firm but gentle. Afraid of the power you hold over me. Afraid of the love I feel for you. The confession hung in the air, thick and heavy with emotion. Jiao Jiao's heart pounded in her chest. Love? The word felt foreign, almost unbelievable. Yet, looking into his eyes, seeing the raw vulnerability in their depths, she knew it was true. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss against her knuckles. This is the jade hairpin my grandmother gave it to you, it means you're family now. Truly family. Jiao Jiao's eyes welled up with tears again, this time tears of pure joy. Jingting, marrying you, he interrupted, his voice husky with emotion, is the greatest luck in my life. The city lights shimmered below, a backdrop to the quiet intimacy of the moment. Jiao Jiao leaned into his embrace, the warmth of his body a comforting anchor in the unfamiliar world she was now a part of. The fear and uncertainty that had plagued her for so long began to recede, replaced by a tentative hope, a fragile belief in the possibility of a future she had never dared to imagine. The jade hairpin, cool against her skin, felt like a promise, a symbol of a new beginning, a life intertwined with the powerful Gu family, a life with Jingting, and a life filled with the promise of love. The biting chill of winter had finally given way to the hesitant warmth of spring. Sunlight, filtered through the nascent leaves of the courtyard's ancient ginkgo tree, dappled the polished floor of the nursery. Lin Jiaojiao watched, a soft smile gracing her lips, as a tiny hand, no bigger than a plum blossom, curled around her finger. A warmth, so profound it ached, bloomed in her chest. Just a few months ago, she had been adrift in a sea of uncertainty, fear clinging to her like a second skin. Now, cradling her daughter in her arms, the world felt anchored, safe. The whispers and judgments, the veiled threats and manipulations, seemed to fade like distant echoes. They no longer held the power to wound. Gu Jingting entered the nursery, his presence filling the room with a quiet strength that resonated with Jiao Jiao's newfound sense of peace. He stopped beside her, his gaze softening as he looked at their daughter. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the baby's soft cheek. A subtle shift in his expression, a flicker of vulnerability that only Jiao Jiao could decipher, spoke volumes of the love he held within. He had been a fortress, walls built high, guarding his emotions with an almost ruthless efficiency. But the arrival of their daughter had chipped away at those defenses, revealing the tender heart beneath. "She's growing so fast," he murmured, his voice low and resonant. "Too fast," Jiao Jiao replied, a bittersweet ache in her voice. She wanted to freeze this moment, to hold on to this fragile perfection forever. Jingting leaned down and kissed her forehead, a gesture that spoke of comfort and reassurance. "She'll always be our little girl." The transition had been anything but smooth. The Gu family, steeped in tradition, had initially balked at the idea of Jingting marrying a girl from a modest background, a girl who had dared to challenge their carefully constructed world. Jiao Jiao, despite the fear that gnawed at her, had stood her ground. She had refused to be a pawn in their games, a secret to be hidden away. The strength she hadn't known she possessed had blossomed, fueled by the fierce love for her child. Grandma Gu, a formidable woman with eyes that could pierce through steel, had been the first to relent. The sight of her great-granddaughter, a miniature replica of Jingting, had melted the icy facade she had maintained for so long. One evening, as Jiao Jiao sat by the baby's crib, Grandma Gu had entered the room, her expression surprisingly gentle. "You remind me of myself," she had said, her voice barely above a whisper. Young, determined, and unwilling to compromise. A small, almost imperceptible smile had touched her lips. "The Gu family needs a woman like you." The Zhou family, however, had proven to be a more difficult obstacle. Zhou Yao, consumed by jealousy and a wounded pride, had continued her campaign to discredit Jiao Jiao, spreading rumors and whispering lies. But her efforts had backfired. Jingting, once distant and detached, had become Jiao Jiao's staunch protector, his love for her hardening into a shield against the Zhou family's machinations. He had systematically dismantled their influence, exposing their schemes and revealing their true intentions. "They underestimated you," he had told Jiao Jiao one evening, a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "They underestimated us." The final blow had come at what was supposed to be Jingting and Zhou Yao's engagement party, a grand affair orchestrated by the Zhou family to solidify their position. It was there, in the midst of the opulent ballroom, surrounded by the city's elite, that Jingting had made his announcement. He had taken Jiao Jiao's hand, his grip firm and unwavering, and faced the stunned crowd. His voice, amplified by the silence that had fallen over the room, resonated with authority. "This is the granddaughter-in-law that Jingting has been talking about," Grandma Gu announced, her voice ringing with pride. Jiao Jiao felt a surge of warmth at her words, a sense of belonging she hadn't realized she craved. Then, Jingting's voice, clear and resolute, cut through the murmuring crowd. "Today, I, Gu Jingting, officially announced the only young mistress of the Gu family is Lin Jiao Jiao." The shock that rippled through the room was palpable. Zhou Yao's face had contorted in a mask of disbelief and fury, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The Zhou family, their ambitions thwarted, could only watch in stunned silence. In the aftermath, the Zhou family's influence waned, their reputation tarnished. Zhou Yao, stripped of her power and prestige, retreated from the public eye, a shadow of her former self. Life, however, continued to bloom for Jiao Jiao and Jingting. They found a quiet happiness in the simple routines of family life, in the shared moments of laughter and tenderness. Jiao Jiao's brother, with Jingting's support, had started his own business, his talent finally given the chance to flourish. The Gu family, once a source of anxiety and fear, had become a haven, a place of warmth and acceptance. One evening, as Jiao Jiao sat on the veranda, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jingting joined her, their daughter asleep in his arms. He sat beside her, their shoulders brushing, a comfortable silence settling between them. "Thank you," Jiao Jiao whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for giving us a chance." Jingting turned to her, his gaze filled with a depth of love that made her heart ache. "We built this together, Jiao Jiao. Our family, our future, it's ours." He leaned down and kissed her, a slow, tender kiss that sealed their bond, a promise of a future filled with love and happiness. The whispers of the past were finally silenced, replaced by the quiet murmur of contentment, a lullaby to their newfound peace. The scent of jasmine blossoms filled the air, a sweet fragrance that symbolized the hope and promise of a new beginning. The scars of the past remained, faint reminders of the battles they had fought, but they no longer defined them. They were a family now, strong and united, ready to face whatever the future held.